Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Today's class, we're going to be reading Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 30. Chapter 2, verse 30. Dehi
Dehi
Nityam
Nityam
Avadya
Avadya
Ayam
Ayam
Dehi
Dehe
Sarvasya
Sarvasya
Bharata
Bharata
Tasmat
Tasmat
Sarvani
Sarvani
Bhutani
Bhutani
Na
Na
Tvam
Tvam
Shochitam
Sochitam
Arhasi.
Arasi.
Anasuya, it's chapter 2, text 30.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. How does the melody go again? Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Natvam shochitam arhasi.
Natvam shochitam arasi.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Natvam shochitam arhasi.
Natvam shochitam arasi.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Natvam shochitam arhasi.
Natvam shochitam arasi. Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Natvam shochitum arasi.
Natvam shochitam arhasi. Would anyone else like to recite?
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi
Nityam avadyoyam.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Natvam shochitum arhasi.
Natvam shochitam arhasi.
Ihi nityam advadhoyayam.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam.
Dihi sarvasya bharata.
Dehi sarvasya bharata.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Tasmat sarvani bhutani.
Natavam satyam arisi.
Natvam shochitam arhasi. Anyone else? Okay. From Prabhu, we're on chapter 2, text 30. Dehi,
Dehi,
the owner of the material body,
the owner of the material body.
Nityam,
Nityam,
eternally,
eternally.
Avadya,
Avadya,
cannot be killed.
cannot be killed.
Ayam,
I am
this soul.
this soul.
Dehi,
Dehi, Dehi,
in the body.
in the body.
Sarvasya,
Sarvasya,
of everyone.
of everyone.
Bharata,
Bharata,
O descendant of Bharat.
all descendants of Bharat.
Tasmat,
Tasmat,
therefore.
therefore.
Sarvani,
Bhavani,
all.
all.
Bhutani,
Bhutani,
living entities that are born.
living entities that are born.
Na,
Now,
never.
never.
Tvam,
Come,
yourself.
yourself.
Shochitam,
So chitam,
to laminate.
to lament.
Arhasi,
Arasi,
deserve.
deserve.
Translation. O descendant of Bharat, he who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, chapter 2, text 30. The Lord now concludes the chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. In describing the immortal soul in various ways, Lord Krishna establishes that the soul is immortal and the body is temporary. Therefore, Arjuna, as a Kshatriya, should not abandon his duty out of fear that his grandfather and teacher Bhishma and Drona will die in the battle. On the authority of Sri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from the material body, not that there is no such thing as a soul, or that living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity resulting from the interaction of chemicals. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged. But at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously. So we'll chant some mantra to invoke auspiciousness. Om Yana Timurandasya Jana Jana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirveshesha Shunyavadi Praschatya Desha Tarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature. So this verse, Krishna is really stressing that the soul is eternal and that the body is temporary. But the soul is immortal. And in the verse, Nityam, eternal. So he's stressing this. The soul cannot be killed. And the body can be destroyed, but the soul cannot be destroyed. The soul is eternal. And so if our body dies, we'll just change bodies. Srila Prabhupada uses the analogy like changing garments, we change bodies. Or like stepping, right foot, left foot, right foot, changing bodies. And matter is dependent on spirit. Matter is produced and it grows from the spiritual platform. So there's material nature and there's spiritual nature and there's inferior nature and superior nature. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that spirit is superior to matter. So matter comes from the spiritual realm. Everything moves from subtle to gross. And the consciousness, our soul, moves through our body like medicine moves through the body. And the body is dependent on the soul is not dependent on the body. So just like a plane that's flying and floating in the sky that's carrying 600 passengers, it's dependent on the pilot. The plane is dependent on the pilot, not on the machine. So if the body is just going to die and the soul is immortal, then some may ask, like, then why does it even matter? Like, why not just kill each other and ourselves? Like, why does it actually matter? What's the point? Well, it all matters. All creation is perfect, and though the soul is immortal, it says here in this purport that violence is not encouraged. And for some that might be confusing, and that has been confusing for me. Like, the Bhagavad Gita is so violent, so many people die. The story of Lord Nrsimhadev is so violent. And what this is speaking to is violence as non-violence. So when violence is of service to Krishna, and when it's of service, then it's not actually violent. So the Bhagavad Gita is about a war and millions of people died, but it was by Krishna's order, and it was spiritualized. And I've thought of this before too as empathy. For me, I can hide behind empathy sometimes, and that's actually more violent. And so as I was meditating on this, that was a realization that I had, is like, being empathetic can seem like it's of service, but when it means that I'm crossing my boundaries, or I'm not being assertive and I'm doing a disservice to myself, then that means I'm doing a disservice to others. So sometimes setting boundaries or communicating assertively can seem aggressive, it can seem violent, but it's a higher level of compassion, which I feel like the Bhagavad Gita is speaking to. There's a higher level of compassion when we have this bigger perspective that we are souls and we're not these bodies. So this verse is saying everyone has a soul. Sarvasya, of everyone. Everyone has a soul. A dog, an elephant, all people, bacteria. And there's two kinds of souls. There's Atma and there's Paramatma. So Atma is the atomic soul, and Paramatma is an aspect of God. So there's three aspects of God: Bhagavan, Brahman, and Paramatma. Bhagavan is the ultimate. That's the personality of Godhead. That's the form that we have, that we can have a really intimate relationship with. And Brahman is the all-pervasive, so that's all energy. That's the imperialist form of God. And then there's Paramatma. Paramatma sits in our heart. And Paramatma is super soul and knows exactly where I'm at and what I need, and knows exactly where you're at and what you need, and where you're at and what you need. And then the atomic soul I think in verse 17 it describes the atomic soul, and it says that it's smaller than 1/10 of a thousand of the tip of a hair. And so it's actually not measurable in this material realm. It's not measurable. The spirit atom is smaller than the material atom. And so it's not material, it's beyond this material reality. So Paramatma, super soul, is in the body of everyone. And there's the analogy that Srila Prabhupada uses of the two birds that are on a branch, and one bird it's like feathers are ruffled and it's so engaged in eating the fruit and enjoying in sense gratification. And then the other bird is like, feathers are down, really calm, collected, and is witnessing this other bird and is completely satisfied. And when the bird that's enjoying in the senses looks up and faces towards super soul Paramatma, is when that soul is then liberated. So I was actually I was having a conversation with Mother Pradana the other day about Paramatma, and something she said you can practice this when you're talking to people. You can practice seeing them as souls instead of seeing them as bodies. And it reminded me of when I was reading this book that Ram Dass wrote called Living the Bhagavad Gita, and he said the same thing. He said we see in other people what we're seeing in ourselves. So if we're just focused on how we look, then we'll just see other people how they look and what they're wearing. If we're more focused on our emotional state and our emotions, then we'll focus on other people's emotions and we'll see that in them. And when we're focused on our soul and we see our soul, then we'll see the soul in others. And I think that's practicing seeing the soul in other people then changes the entire context of the relationship and changes the reason why we're relating. And I think that's a really practical practice as well. So Paramatma is not just in the heart, but it's also within Paramanu, the atom. So Paramatma is in every atom. And so if you just take a look around you and see everything around you as atoms and see Paramatma in all atoms, everything is created from Krishna. Everything is Krishna, and nothing could exist without Krishna. So some inquire, have you seen God? Actually, a little boy came up to Mother Malini just last week at the community kirtan and asked her, can you see God?
Mhm.
And Srila Prabhupada is saying that the advanced devotees can see nothing else, can only see God. In the temple, we see the deities. And then when out of the temple, we see Krishna in our heart. If we've developed love for Krishna. And that's what the entire practice and system is about developing love of Krishna. So the more you advance in Krishna consciousness, the more that you see Krishna. So I said that the whole process is about developing love for Krishna. So just like two people falling in love, they're always thinking of each other, both of them simultaneously, always thinking about each other. Like, when can I see you next? When can I see you next? And it's like the same thing with Krishna, like falling in love with Krishna, thinking about Krishna all the time. When can I see you next? And Krishna says, always think of me. The instruction from Krishna is to always think of Krishna. And through bhakti, even by bhakti, you can develop love for Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada says that the most fortunate person can understand Krishna. And it's by the mercy of the Guru and of Krishna that one gets the seed of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada says that we should water this seed. And watering the seed is hearing and chanting the names of Krishna, hearing and chanting Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna should be worshipped, Krishna should be heard, Krishna should be chanted, and Krishna should be remembered. And in that way, you will advance in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Would anyone like to share anything that's present for you, or any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie, for your class today and sharing. I'm wondering if you would be willing to share a little bit about your personal journey in Krishna consciousness, like your personal experience thus far. You're immersing yourself in this practice, and yeah, could you share a little bit about do you have what's been your process? I'm curious.
Yeah, I'll share. it's been a process over the last few years, and it started off really slow, and it was through getting involved in Savatov that I was introduced to bhakti. I was associating with devotees and didn't even know it. And I remember, I think it was a couple years ago, David said something like I see you as a fish swimming in the water of bhakti, or something like that. And I was just like, what? Like, what does that mean? Like, I belong somewhere. There's somewhere, so that really touched me. And it was, I think in March of 2021 was the first time that I visited the temple. And then last year when I went to the advanced seminar is when I like really was touched and really had a taste of Krishna. And it was there that I just like woke up and like really actually connected to Krishna. And I realized that I was lying to myself, and I was saying I'm so connected, but I realized that I was actually so disconnected, and I was connecting to my mind, but it was limiting, and I was struggling with like, why isn't this working? And at the advanced seminar, when I connected with Krishna, I was like, oh, this is what I want, actually. Like, this is what I want. And there was a lot of emotional charge there for me. It felt really, really big. And so in that moment, I decided, like, okay, I'm gonna give up coffee, and I'm giving up alcohol, I'm giving up meat and eggs, and I just like want to, and I'm gonna chant every day, and I'm gonna explore this path. And then it's been like just carving out deeper since then. I've stayed at the Denver temple a couple times for a few weeks in May and in July. And then I was planning to, when I was at the temple in May, I kept intuitively sensing Mother Malini. And I was like, okay, I think that there's something here. Like maybe I meant to work with her. I don't know if it's one-on-one in coaching or if I'm going to go stay with her. And I meditated on it, and it was like, oh, I'm going to go stay with her. That's like what my heart was saying, Paramatma was saying. And then so I was going to stay for like 4 to 6 weeks, and then Krishna rearranged my life. So he like just took things out and made other things inaccessible, and just pointed me in the direction to dive deeper into Savatov and into bhakti. And then it became clear that I was going to be here for at least 3 months. And so this is I'm immersing myself right now. And there's definitely been doubts that have come up for me, and I'm holding that. And at the same time, I feel like I'm getting more and more clear that this is the path for me. And I am experiencing a lot of faith and a lot of joy. And I feel like my soul is just like drinking it all up, like my soul has been longing for this connection for so long. And I sense that there's so much potential and infinite depth here, so that feels really inspiring to me. And I'm feeling like more austerities and more sacrifices stirring in me. Like I want to dive deeper, and so I'm holding that and listening. Thanks for asking.
Wow, that's beautiful share. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, you were, there was some attraction there at first, and it sounds like something really profound, like maybe touched your heart like so deeply and moved you to like, really get a taste of like, love for Krishna at the advanced seminar. And just really appreciate hearing how you had this, there's this attraction that keeps building, and you keep giving yourself, surrendering to like, okay, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to continue down this journey. And the more that you're doing it, the more you're feeling connected, and your faith is becoming stronger, and you're really relishing this journey that you're on. And I really am inspired by your just commitment to give yourself, to the practice. It's, the austerities are austere, but it kind of sounds like you're experiencing the effects of, giving yourself to this process, and how practicing these austerities, there's actually a gift in that experience. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for the class, Hare Krishna. Something stood out to me that I never really heard before. No, I mean it makes sense. It's just I just heard it and thought about it for the first time. You said that matter is dependent on spirit, and that like gave me a new perspective, like how powerful the soul is, and like the soul and Krishna are just so much more powerful than matter. Matter's just waiting to be handled. And I just never really thought about it like that, like life like that. Like I have matter around me, and I'm encased in matter, and there's material consciousness, and there's just so much. I'm in the material world, and the whole entire material world is dependent on the spiritual energy. Anyway, just something new clicked with me about how powerful the soul is and how powerful. I mean, it was just like infinitely superior to the matter, and we go around thinking that we think we're an illusion, not realizing how much like power we have, and I don't mean power to be exploited, of course. I mean like liberation. Like we have the power, like we have so much like we have conditioning and all these things that we hold ourselves back with. And yeah, just something became illuminated for me. So it's something you said in the class, and thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, there's like a spark, a perspective shift, realizing that matter is dependent on spirit, and spirit is eternal and so powerful, and the matter is just temporary. But we're so immersed in matter, and we identify with matter, and in that there's so much suffering. To remember that everything comes from spirit, and that's actually who we are. That's our true identity. There's liberation and inspiration there. Anandini Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you for your class. I really appreciate it in the clarity, like simple and clear. And what touched me was when you said that that the soul, everything comes from the soul, and the soul is nourished by hearing and chanting. I somehow heard it in a new way. It really touched me. And I have a question. It's a question I have since many, many, many years, and I ask it again and again. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts and insights about it. So, I mean, you did mention a little about it, but so Bhagavad Gita, it's like the book of peace, and yet it happens on a battlefield. There's war and there's killing. And yeah, what are your thoughts about that? Like today, war happening today, there it was very clear. Krishna was on the battlefield, and he, he justified, he gave sanctions. Oh, it's okay. But what about today? Who like Srila Prabhupada says at the end, though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously. So who today can make that decision, or can say, yes, this violence here is justified? And do you have any thoughts, insights on that?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit, and maybe Mother Malani like to share too if you want. Yeah, that's a good question. Like who today can say that war is justified? And yeah, I was thinking of this as violence, as non-violence, like when it's of loving service. And so Krishna was saying, like, we're all souls, it doesn't matter. This is like the Dharma. He was saying, like, trust me, trust trust me, to Arjuna. And today with the war, I don't know if it's of loving service, and if Krishna is saying this needs to happen and giving someone orders for this to happen, I don't know. But I think like that there's a difference between where the consciousness is with war, whereas in the Bhagavad Gita, the consciousness is in loving service, and there's this higher level of compassion. And then there's also war and there's violence that is to be violent, it's to gain power, it's to gain resources. And when it's coming from that place of consciousness, then it's not non-violence, it's not of loving service.
Thank you. I love your response.
Mhm.
You bring in this aspect of where let's say, where are they coming from, those in war? And here they're coming from compassion and loving devotion. So yeah, that makes it quite simple. Thank you.
You're welcome. Malini.
Hi, Krishna, that's an interesting question, Anandini, and there is so many aspects to it, so many aspects we can take a look at, like the aspect of the war itself, of Kurukshetra, understanding it by understanding the circumstance, even external circumstance. And then, in a sense, war is always in the service of the soul. And that's a hard one to also accept. It's Adidayvika, so it's like one of the threefold miseries that come from the demigods. And so the material energy is always in service to the evolution of the soul. That's also an aspect. And what Prabhupada is saying is that we shouldn't be involved in violence unless it's supported by authority. And we can see in Arjuna's consciousness, he didn't want to fight. It wasn't for his aggrandizement, it wasn't for his sense gratification, it wasn't, he didn't even want to fight at all, and he thought like it was hard. And sometimes I think of Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc didn't want to fight. She really didn't want, but she was clearly guided by God. Like she needs to get involved in that war, and that war wasn't like externally, it didn't look like a war sanctioned by the Lord, but she was sanctioned by the Lord somehow or other for some reason. So that's a few different points, like the situation. And Joan of Arc fighting in that war is probably coming from the consciousness that Valerye is speaking about. Like she didn't get involved in the war because she wanted gratification, honor, or fame or anything. And she did get so much fame because we still speak about her. And people know about Joan of Arc much more than they know about Alexander the Great or whatever, because she became famous because Krishna made her famous. Yeah. So that's a few points. There is so much more, like reading the Mahabharata. It helped me understand how the war took place and how it was a righteous war. But every war is righteous in one sense, because it's always, it's like the threefold misery manifesting. So as a service to Krishna, and then for us, each individual, we want to see what we get involved with and how much violence we get involved with in the course of our services. Because there is war, but there is also killing mosquitoes, or killing roaches. Or yesterday I made a decision to put rice into the freezer because it was full of bugs. And so I took, that's Krishna's boga, and there is bug, but I was in a situation like it's a war against bugs. And is it sanctioned by the Lord? or not? Am I supposed to just let them eat the rice, that's Krishna's bhoga, and then forget about that bhoga? Or am I supposed to protect Krishna's bhoga and make sure those bugs, are not there? So we have situations like that all the time. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I recently I read in Srimad Bhagavatam that war happens like forest fire.
Mhm.
And forest fire can happen, usually it happens because twigs are like rubbing each other.
Mhm.
And as you were sharing, I was reminded of that. And I see in my consciousness, I'm looking for a culprit, like who caused the war. And what
Yeah.
you're saying just creates a totally different perspective.
Yeah, it's
The war is
Yeah.
it's like designed to happen, and then there's different living entities playing different roles in it.
like the
Get to
forest fire.
decide.
The wind is involved, the fact that there is no rain is involved. There's so many things involved in creating a forest fire. So similarly, the living entities in the form of human being are used for the service of the demigod and another disaster called war. Yeah, and that gives a different perspective instead of like we can stop war, or who is to blame in the war between Russia and Ukraine. It's not clear. Last year when I went to Denver, I was very clear that Russians are really, really bad. Something like that. And then I met an Ukrainian devotee there who was like mourning the death of her brother. So of course I assumed that her brother was killed by the Russian and the Russian was the bad guy. She said, no, my brother was really trying to be part of the revolution, to throw off the ruler of Ukraine, and the Russians were helping, and then he got killed in that. So it gave me a completely different perspective from someone was just lost a brother in a war. And she wasn't blaming the Russians. She was really like saying, my brother is a hero because he was fighting against Ukraine. And he was living in Ukraine. He was Ukrainian in our whole family. So it's just, it's impossible to retrace a forest fire, and it's impossible to retrace a war. It's just happened because we can retrace it and the cause and effect towards the sinful activities of killing the cows. And that's the real cause. The real cause of war is the killing of the cows, and that we can retrace it that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Parampara Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your class. I heard I appreciate how you synthesized, these points together, and it was like fresh. It was like a fresh presentation. Felt like that, to me, and I appreciated that. And so just this conversation, I just wanted to jump in the conversation about the, Molly mentioned there's so many different aspects to to this conversation about war, or like violence and as non-violence. And I just just some practical things that come up for me are the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought by kshatriyas, like real kshatriyas, like with so much training, and like kind of just is so distant from the soldiers and the wars that we have today. It was a different age. And so the war of today is so degraded, compared to the the kshatriyas. They would fight, and then at the end of the day they would stop fighting, and then they would even uh enemies would have dinner together, and like associate with each other, in the evening, and there was such an honor and a code, and there's rules of engagement, and so it's like you can't really compare the war of today to the war that was happening at that time. We don't have kshatriyas, and that's part of a kshatriya's training, is to know whenever it's a just fight or not or whatever. So it's just such a distant form, compared to today. And I think the the conversation about our own lives, I think it's more applicable. It'd be hard for me to, I mean, war is going to happen, but as far as like devotees, practically speaking, like getting involved in a war, like that seems like, Lord Chaitanya, gave it's in the age of Kali Yuga, because the Battle of Kurukshetra was in a previous age. So in this age of Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya gave the prescription, and his weapons, his soldiers were, and his weapons are, the holy name and prasadam and kirtan. Those are the weapons of the Kali Yuga, the devotees. And then Srila Prabhupada is known as the general, the Senapati. He's the general. So that's where we take our, marching orders, in the battle, is from, Srila Prabhupada. And I think that, but I think it's the much more relevant conversations, like where Malini was going about, like, yeah, okay, my own life, because there's a sense of like, okay, violence is nonviolence. So there's a sense of like, well, I can do anything in service. Anything is on the table if it's in service to Krishna. That's kind of like, there's underlying message there that like I could, if it's in service of Krishna, then there is no, that's the measurement. So I thought, would you a question would be like, so how do we what's like the checks and balance system, the accountability of how we determine, like, okay, is this truly justified, and is this my duty? Like, how do we know, like, this is my duty, this is my dharma, this is my service, and this is justified because it's in service to Krishna? If you would respond to that. Hare Krishna.
Thanks for sharing that perspective, and I'm going to pass it over.
Oh, I wanted to hear Valerie's.
Oh, you want to hear mine?
Yeah.
I don't know what I have to share. Well, that's something that I personally struggle with, is sometimes I find myself in that question of like, but is this of service? Like, this seems violent. Is this of service? And so that's why I feel stuck in answering this question, because I don't know. I'm like in a process of figuring that out. And yeah, I don't know where to go. Yeah, like sometimes it comes up for me with like buying things or driving my car. Is like driving my car or traveling seems violent. Or there's like, yeah, I did a river trip, and it's a 3-week river trip in March, and I wanted to buy a dry bag, and I was like, but is this like a violent thing to do? It's made out of plastic, and is it just for me, or is it of service? And so those are a couple of examples. And you gave a great example too, Malini, with the bugs in the rice, and it's like killing, but it was of service. And you were in that question, is this of service?
Yeah. I like to see all those bugs dying in service of the rice offered to Krishna, and then getting the benefit.
And so the bugs get the benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like all the soldiers that were sacrificed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they all got liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good example of the car, because, like, let's say I drive my car to do book distribution. Like I have a book distribution party, you know, like I traveled a lot like that. We had a van, and in Japan and other places, we had a van and we were traveling everywhere to give Krishna consciousness to people. And then as we do that, we pollute the earth. As we do that, we use a lot of resources from the earth, gas and etc. As we do that, we kill bugs. We roll over ants, and there is bugs that hit the windshield. You know, as we do that, there is so much violence and also so much disrespect of Mother Earth and disrespect. However, because it's in the service of preaching Krishna consciousness, then, you know, that violence is transformed into non-violence. But I say we'll do the same thing to go to festivals and have a good time, or for my, you know, sense gratification, or even if it's like peaceful sense gratification, like I'm going to have a sadvic time in the mountains, it's still material. And then in that, then it's like a mix. There will be like probably a mix of karma, because I go to the mountains, so it's sadvic, so it brings me some good, but then all the bugs that have been killed, and all the resources that I use, and all the pollution I created for Mother Earth in service to my peace, well, that also I need to account for. Like that. So that's one way we can look at it. Because we are always killing, even when we breathe, we're killing living entities, because there's bacteria, like you said. So many things, like every time we breathe, we're killing living entities. So am I breathing for the service of Krishna? Am I maintaining this body in the service of Krishna? Or am I maintaining this body because I'm attached to the body? And I'm attached to, you know, this life, this cartoon character, like Garuda like to say. You know, I'm attached to that cartoon character, and I'm investing my energy of breathing to maintain that cartoon character. So, you know, of course, it's never black and white. It's always, we are mixed devotees. So it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Yeah. But there is no free path. We are going to get a reaction each time we do something that's not in the service of the Lord. You can continue.
Yeah, well, I feel inspired, and like there's more for me to sit with here, and part I like that you mentioned that the Kshatriyas, they're trained in what is of service and what is justice, and to me I was thinking like Srila Prabhupada is giving us instructions, and you mentioned that too, like there are instructions, and it's like our training for living the war in the Kali Yuga. And another example that came up to me is there's a friend that I have who he hunts and he eats meat, and I experience him as like so sattvic and connected, and it's like really a spiritual practice for him, and like so connected to the animals, and so it was so confusing for me of like, wait, how is this person like so spiritual and so sattvic and also is creating violence, and is this violence or is it non-violence? And it was kind of a deep process for me, reflecting on violence and non-violence, and from, I haven't read this, but from what I've heard, the Srimad Bhagavatam talks about eating meat, but it's like killing the animals is a sacrifice, and it's of service, but it's, from my understanding, like there aren't people that are trained in that way to have those kinds of ceremonies in the Kali Yuga, and so now I've come to the conclusion that, well, that's not actually non-violence. Him hunting, even though he's a sattvic person and really connected, it's still violent. So that was another thought that came to me.
There is two types of sacrifice around animals. One sacrifice that was performed by the Brahmins, and it was kind of proving the Brahmins' power. So they will take an old animal and they will sacrifice the animal in a fire to rejuvenate the animals to give it a new life, the next life. So it was nothing about eating there. And then, Srimad Bhagavatam is said, yeah, the food for human being is a lower animal like goats or deer will be part of that. And there is also, in order for the human being to purify themselves, they do that as a sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, there is also incorporated the reaction. It's like a lot of repairs. And then in that sacrifice, the person says, okay, I'm killing you now. And I give you permission to kill me as many times as there is air on your body. And that's a mantra that one says in killing the animals. And then after a while, the hope is that the person wake up and say, I don't want that to be done to myself. So there is two types of sacrifice of animal. One that's not about eating, that's not about maintaining the body, that's about the power of the Sanskrit mantras and the purity of the Brahmana that's spoken in Bhagavatam. And the other one that's spoken on the Bhagavatam is like, okay, if you need to eat meat, then do this in the sacrifice. And then in that sacrifice, you accept the consequences of your eating meat. And that's purifying because it will lead someone to not want to do that anymore. But then it's better than going to the slaughterhouse. It's so much better than going to the store and buying a piece of flesh and be completely removed from the violence and from the fact that I'm eating an animal. There is something more elevated about that. Yeah.
Damayanti, probably you had your hand up.
Yes. I noticed when we were speaking about divide what's right and wrong, that in my consciousness, I have this like, oh, right, wrong. Like I have this quick, strong judgment. Like, of course, if this is any, I feel like I'm not saying I'm actually right in having this consciousness. I'm just noticing that have a quick, strong judgment of right and wrong, whether any scenario, the rice, the car, the war, like lay out the facts for me. Obviously that's not every situation in my life that I like quick, strong judgments. And sometimes I am wavering, but in matters of what's moral and right and just, I have a strong feeling. Doesn't mean I'm right, but I'm bringing this out to this, just to raise awareness is that I don't always pause to contemplate. I just go with my instinct, and I don't often pause in prayer, and I'm humble and cautious, and I'm not necessarily leaning on that side of the spectrum of consulting, with Krishna and Prabhupada and meditating. I want action, and I don't know what's driving that, but I just wanted to bring awareness to that I don't feel humble. I don't feel Krishna conscious. I tend to just be like, what's right and wrong? What's in front of me? I'll judge, I'll decide what's going on. Leave it up to me kind of mentality. And that I don't know if that's devotional. I mean, there's sometimes you do need those qualities, but for someone like me, I know for sure that I need to cultivate like prayer time and taking time, and that would be good for me. So anyway, I was just noticing that and thought to share.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, you're more self-awareness. Would anyone else like to share? Any last shares?
Hare Krishna. Well, I mentioned accountability process, and then like, what's the accountability, or how do I, the checks and balance of like, how do we determine? And then I mentioned Srila Prabhupada, like he's the general. So like, we could take from his, example and his instructions. He drove cars. He was in cars. He took airplanes. Airplanes are, hugely, seemingly disturbing to the material order of things, you know, to take an airplane around. So we can look to him for an example. And then also there's the, maybe Mother Malini can share more on this, like the principle of like guru, sadhu, and shastra as like a checks and balance system. I wonder if Mother Malini would share about that a little bit.
I don't have more to share than what you just expressed. Like, yeah, that's a check and balance. And also some places, Srila Prabhupada says, when we are not sure, let's approach three devotees that we respect. You know, like people who have maybe more maturity in devotion life, maybe more that we consider more advanced than we are. And then, so Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, it's a check and balance to okay, is that aligned with Shastra? Is that aligned with what Srila Prabhupada? Sometimes I'm asking the question to myself, you know, what will Srila Prabhupada want me to do? It's very rarely that I'm just in a question mark about that. I want to pretend I'm in a question mark about it. I want to pretend not to know, but in reality, Srila Prabhupada is quite clear. And the Shastra, you know, Shastra is Srila Prabhupada's books too, and Sadhu, Srila Prabhupada also, and also Prabhupada encourages us to take shelter of other devotees. Sometimes if I have a very important decision to make in my life, I do approach, like recently there was something I was really torn about because I was thinking, well, on one hand, it's like the greatest service, and on another hand, my situation seems to indicate super soul and whatever else coming to me seems to indicate I'm not supposed to do that because there is an indication of around us, people around us, events, our body, so many indications. So I was torn about a decision, and I approached three devotees that I consider, you know, mature, advanced, like that, and I presented my dilemma before them, and I got clear responses, and that responses was matching what my intuitive response too, even though it didn't seem logical according to Prabhupada's teaching or Prabhupada instruction. So there is a lot of check and balance, and really, as long as we, in a sense, as long as we follow the order of the spiritual master to chant at least 16 rounds a day, and to follow 4 regulative principles, and to, you know, to follow the program and to read, then, you know, everything else we do is kind of almost secondary. And then when we do it, if it's not aligned, then we'll get feedback. We'll get feedback and we will get realigned, and we will get, our process is going to go on because our desire to serve Krishna is there. So even if we don't do some things that seems, you know, like that's the highest, let's say, in one sense, it doesn't matter because the process itself will realign. You know, it's like a GPS. We are always realigned. Our desire is there, even if we do some things that maybe it's not so, then the reaction, because we are under the jurisdiction of Krishna's karma, then the reaction is going to help us to move forward in our devotional life. So that's just a few points. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like Prabhupada is the guru, and then Shastra is Prabhupada's books, and then like the sadhus would be like, yeah, asking senior devotees, people that we experience as more experienced, that were mentors, and then by doing, what's that?
I would say people we trust also.
Yes, okay, right. And then by yeah, if we're engaged in the process, Prabhupada's process that he recommends, then it's like a self-corrective process eventually, anyway.
exactly, if we are following instruction and the basic instruction Srila Prabhupada give us, then everything else becomes like a self-correcting process, constant feedback, constant redirections, constant refinement. Yeah. I'd like to hear more of Valerye, what she wants to say about all that.
I'm just taking it in. I don't have anything to add. Parampara, do you feel complete in your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Any other last shares?
How come we don't how come we allow ourselves to be driven by the material energy when we are so powerful and so much superior to the material energy?
I think it's, so the question is how
come
we allow ourselves to be driven by the material energy? Yeah, well, I imagine that there's a lot of different reasons, and one of them is Kali Yuga, and that there's so much illusion that we're experiencing, and that the material realm there's so much illusion, and there's so much attachment to the material realm, and our souls are covered. And so although our souls are so powerful, and the material realm rests upon the spirit realm and is dependent on the spirit realm, our souls get covered. And Srila Prabhupada uses analogies with gold. That gold is our soul, and it can get covered up with dirt. But he said something about when we blow on it like a fire, we can illuminate gold. Something, I'm getting it wrong. But yeah, there becomes, we get lost in the illusion.
How come we choose to get lost? Because that seems, okay, yoga, or we are covered. I almost feel like victim, like I'm helpless here.
Yeah.
But are we?
Right. Yeah. We're always at choice. We always have choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're choosing.
Well, I don't know exactly, but the thoughts I have that we choose that because of sense gratification, because of wanting pleasure, wanting happiness, and trying to find it in places that it doesn't actually exist. So we think that we're choosing happiness or choosing pleasure or choosing joy, bliss, but we're not even finding it. But the path that we're taking to have those experiences it doesn't work. But I don't think that's really like the whole picture of.
Oh, it is. We want to enjoy separated from Krishna. We want to separate us outside from the tree. We want to enjoy separated from Krishna.
Yeah, we want to enjoy separated.
The birds that you were speaking about earlier, the bird, and there's two birds in the tree. One bird is enjoying and trying to enjoy. Even so, again and again, there's no enjoyment there. Again and again, the person does the same thing. It's like a mouse, I want you to speak, not me.
Hare Krishna, can I speak to this for to just kind of solidify it for myself? Yeah, but what I was hearing is like we don't know, we're not fully realized of who we are in our relationship to God. So that's why we're like seeking like our pleasure externally from God, or trying to experience something in this material world, because we don't we don't really we don't really we don't realize who we really are. Yeah, in our relationship to the supreme. So it's like without that paradigm or that perspective, then we could just be lost forever. Mm. In the material world, just kind of over and over again.
Yeah, when we're not realizing who we are, we can be lost in the material.
Yeah,
Forever.
yeah, forever. And my
Forever.
laugh was, it was kind of silly, but it's more like madness. Anyway, thank you.
Madness and being lost, you're saying? Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Hare Krishna, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I have another thought, and it's that the soul is extremely small. It's very, very powerful, but it's also very small, and the material energy is very, very strong. It's Maya, it's Krishna's energy. He describes that in Bhagavad Gita also, like it's very hard to overcome. And I was just thinking, like, yeah. So even if we make a choice, like I guess everyone here has made a choice, okay, let me be attracted to Krishna, let me go back to God, and still we're so attracted by the material energy. And we're influenced because we're so small as a spirit soul. And so it takes like, I don't know, complete conviction and endeavor and commitment to really get out and not be attracted by the material energy. That's, for me, that's another aspect to it. And yeah, Srila Prabhupada also says we are victimized by the material energy. So I don't think that ultimately we're victims. And it's at the same time, by making this choice to separate from Krishna, we are becoming victims again and again. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you for your share. The thought that I had is I was visualizing the Atma and Paramatma, and you're speaking to the soul. Atma is so tiny, and it's influenced by the material nature and by Maya, and covered up by Maya. And I forget exactly what you said when I had this click of like, yeah, you were speaking to like the soul is so small, and even though it's so powerful in a way that it's so powerful, but also Maya and the material nature is so powerful. And I was just thinking like it's in the relationship between Atma and Paramatma. It's in the relationship with Krishna that we can access this power that can overcome Maya. It's only in that relationship that we can overcome Maya.
Yes, that's my understanding too.
Easily. It's said in Bhagavad Gita. We can easily overcome Maya in surrendering to Krishna.
Yeah, we can easily overcome Maya by surrendering to Krishna. And also in surrendering to Krishna, that can be hard. It can be hard to surrender.
It can happen in the moment.
But it is the only way to not be so influenced and so victimized by the material nature and by Maya.
Yeah, because Maya is Krishna's energy.
Yeah.
So it's powerful because it's Krishna's energy, not because it's a separate energy. It's Krishna's energy. And so she's in service to Krishna. So she's very powerful. She's like more powerful than the covered atomic soul. At the same time, as soon as the atomic soul surrendered to the big bird and surrendered to Krishna, then it's very easily Maya becomes in service. We are
Mhm.
all working together, not against each other anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and Maya is a pure devotee of Krishna, and Maya actually wants us to be pure, you know,
Mhm.
and so she's like coming in to challenge us to make sure that we are pure, because to enter into Krishna's realm, we need to be completely pure.
Mhm.
And so she, in a way, she is in service to
Mhm.
us too. And with that perspective, we can
Cooperate.
we can what?
We can cooperate.
What'd you say?
We
Corporate?
can cooperate. you know,
Co-pilot.
Cooperate. Cooperate. Work together.
We can work together. Yeah,
Mhm.
yes. Yeah, we can work together with Maya. Any other thoughts? Yeah, we'll close class. Hare Krishna.
Valerye Kitaki.
Bhagavad Gita ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai. Haribol.
Everybody.
Hare Krishna.